All right, we are here. We are live, and I'm really excited to be here this morning. So, thank you all for joining us this morning for our first conversation about reigniting humanity with leadership. I think there's a lot of webinars that are going on right now that are giving tips of how to do things, and was talking to my good friend Christine McHugh, who is joining me today, about how we could give and serve during this rough time that everyone is going through together. And we've been having some conversations about leadership and what it means to lead during a time like this. And Christine is kind enough to enter into these conversations with me and to bring you all along live. So I have Christine McHugh, my friend and former Starbucks executive, startup executive, startup advisor, coach, mentor, and trainer of leaders. And I'm just delighted that you would join me today. So thank you, Christine, for being here.
Super excited for the conversation.
Awesome. Well, let's give our participants here an idea of what they can expect from us. So, we have both been in leadership positions and doing leadership collectively for the better part of 4 decades, probably.
A long time.
A long time, which means we have a lot of experience in this. But here's my icebreaker question for you, Christine. Do we have all the answers, you and I?
What? No.
Exactly. We don't, right?
Yeah,
We don't
that's
have
never going to
all of the
happen.
answers. Exactly. So I think, one of the things that we've realized here, I just want to let everybody know there are no slides. This is a live conversation. We've taken in a lot of questions that we've gotten from our networks, from employees, from leaders inside of the companies that we work with, from our clients, and just looked at like what are people struggling with right now. And we decided to focus these conversations around the actions, behavior, and the things that leaders can do to really help and serve during this time. So if you don't see slides, you're not missing them. We don't have any. And the setup of this is we have a conversation we want to have for about 15 minutes because we know leaders are busy. So you all have tight schedules. We want to talk about a topic, keep it tight for about the first 15 minutes, and then answer some questions that have come up around this topic for the second 15 minutes. So you'll see a Q&A box. You are more than welcome to put your questions in there. And if we can get to them, we will. And if it's a different topic, but we think we might want to answer those questions, we'll take those into consideration for our future conversations. And right now we have this plan to go for the next 8 weeks. And we're hopeful just that you will take away a couple of juicy tidbits each week and maybe an action that you can take to be strong as a leader and to help the people that you serve. Christine, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think it just to underscore that it's intended to be really organic, right? So Tony and I have certainly put together some thoughts, and we've collected some insights from our network, from our communities, from our peers, from what's happening in the broader world. And although we'd like to believe we might have a lot of the answers, we don't. And I think the organic nature of this conversation is meant to create collaboration, provide support for one another. And I mean all of the people who choose to join us, and to see where it takes us. So it is not super structured by design, because we want also know that what's happening right now in our world with COVID-19 is that things are changing every single day. And so there's this point, and this is really a leadership point as well. While you can still have a pretty solid vision for the future and a sense of where you want to go, how you get there is going to change based on new inputs and new insights for today. And that's how we are, have created this experience for you. Of course, we want it to be a high value. And so we'll be looking to get, feedback on that approach, but just wanted to underscore that it's loose by design.
Absolutely. I love that. And I actually love something that you just said. And it, highlights our topic for today, which is the theme that runs through everything. It's just, what does it mean to be a great leader during a time like this? There's no playbook for it. The last global pandemic was 100 years ago, and the world is a very different place now. Technology, our styles of work, healthcare, everything's a little bit different. And yet there's, there are some things that live through it all in terms of how to be a great leader. So you mentioned having a really strong vision. And I was actually talking to my husband last night about this idea of being a great leader. And he's one of the greatest leaders that I know. I asked him what he felt like was most important in leading through times of such uncertainty. And the first thing he said was having a strong vision and confidence in that vision and leading with that vision and confidence. What do you think about that?
I think definitely, because people want to have hope, right? They want to, and team members want to know where they're going, and they want to have hope for the future of the organization that they're in. So being really clear and consistent and unwavering in that vision gives people confidence that no matter the path to get to that vision might evolve, which we know it's going to naturally, but also in some cases it's going to have to. But if the vision is still the same, it gives people something to anchor to. I mean, a lot of research out there is that employees want to, when they're part of an organization, want to feel part of something bigger. They want to be connected to a higher purpose, and they want to have a clear sense of where their vision is so that they can connect that to their work. So absolutely, I'd say yes, vision, and being repetitive with it in the messaging and reminding people that this is where we're going, again, that the path might be different on how to get there.
Hmm. And that second point you just made, which is really around communication, whether you are in a world where all of your employees are now remote, or whether they still need to show up all the time. I think sometimes we get into this thinking that when we communicate something one or two times to people, that now they know, right? And I think through years of leadership, that you can't communicate something enough, and especially as things are changing every day, the communication of the message and where we're going and how we're getting there is so key to getting there, right? To continuing to go and to continue to bring people along with you on the march towards that vision.
And I'd just add that I was reading actually an article this morning from Harvard Business Review titled, that's the only one it's published, actually it's back in February, Lead Your Business Through the Coronavirus Crisis. And it talks a lot about communication, but really also part of that having really clear facts, because in absence of communication or absence of facts, people make up their own stories. And that can do a lot of damage in terms of how the team's feeling about their work, where they anticipate what they anticipate is happening with the business, their organization, their communities. And so one of the case studies in there was that this organization was, say they were meeting once a month or once a week, they're actually up to their communication to daily with employees and keeping it really succinct. And one of my consulting clients I work with used to have, I think it was monthly, like all hands meetings for all 100 employees in their organizations. And they've moved those up to weekly. So it just depends on what's happening in your organization, but that consistency, that making sure that there's facts, anticipating questions before they come up, and mitigating people creating their own stories is an important part of communication in addition to layering in the vision.
Mm-hmm. I think, something that I heard threaded through all of that, and this is something that we have definitely noticed at Aduro, is that, we have our weekly all hands meeting, which is great. We get to communicate with people on a weekly basis. And it's actually been even more engaging, I think, since everyone has been remote. We have a weekly email that goes out on Wednesdays from our COO. But one thing we kind of kept hearing, we had our CEO get on and talk about the financial status of the company, how we're doing, what people can expect. And that was great for a week or two. And then people wondered again. And so I think the consistency of the communication in what's going on and the transparency of it. It's one thing to communicate things. It's another thing if people think they're not getting the whole story, and the level of anxiety that can build in people. And so, I think transparency is really important, even when it's difficult news to hear sometimes.
Definitely. I mean, that is one of the, the top lessons is transparency. And even if you don't know, right? I think that's important too, is here's what I do know, here's what I don't know, and being really clear on that. instead of potentially, not making up, but omitting information, but without explicitly saying, we don't know at this point. I was talking with a friend who's a small business owner the other day, and she was feeling at the time that, her business is being managed well, and it was insular, and that nobody was going to be impacted. And then a week later, she realized she had to make some decisions that were going to be really tough from an employee perspective. And I think her learning and reflection in that is, you can answer, I don't know. Sometimes if you go the other side of either not saying anything or potentially guaranteeing nothing's going to happen, that's really even hard to say at this point too. So I think being transparency means, sharing and knowing what you can, and acknowledging if you don't have information or you're not sure exactly what the future is going to hold.
Absolutely. And I think that also just goes to building trust, right? Making guarantees to people. There's no time in business that you can make guarantees of things you're going to do for the long term. And this is definitely no different, especially as things are changing on a daily basis. I think, something that I really want to hit on this morning is on this idea of, it is this new normal. It doesn't feel normal to people. We do need to communicate. We need to be transparent. And we need to be confident and have a vision. But we also need to be real and human. And I think it's a time for being exceedingly human with our people, and really, having real conversations with them. So, I think one of the things that really matters as a leader is the relationships that you build with your people, how you build them on trust, and checking in with them during this time. The way that you may see people as always sunny and happy and having a great attitude may not actually be the way that they are feeling on the inside. And so what do you think about just, things are changing for people, the humanity of being a leader? How do you think about that during this time?
I think you really need to 10x your, connection with people. And by connection, I don't necessarily mean increase your frequency of touch points, which you do need to do. And it's going to look different by person, but it's really putting your radar up for what might be happening around them and some of the problems they might be facing, some of the support they might be needing, and doing that with empathy. And by empathy of really listening and trying to kind of understand what's happening in their situation, and also helping them find resources to potentially support one another. I know it can be a delicate balance sometimes as a leader. You want to encourage people to be connected with one another and support one another, but you don't want everybody to kind of get into this place where they're potentially bringing each other down, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think, helping them realize that maybe they're not alone, or maybe somebody else has solved this problem that they're facing and might be a good resource for them. So kind of helping them in the spirit of listening and problem solving helps your relationship with them. And just a lot of acknowledgement that they may be dealing with, this and, it might be more difficult for them, and they might need a little extra support. But when you started the question, Tony, one thing I went to the top of my mind is, we have to take care of ourselves first as leaders, right? Yeah. So I definitely am huge on building relationships with teams and staying connected with them and using empathy and helping them solve problems. And we have to take care of ourselves. I'm in a situation right now where I don't have a direct team. I've had teams of up to 100 and more. And my friends and colleagues who are leading teams of any size, like, it is just putting an extra layer of stress on the leaders, because not only are they trying to take care of their business, their customers, and their teams, they're trying to manage this themselves with their families, their own emotion, those things and decisions they're having to make. So it's really as or even more important to make sure that you're taking care of yourself as a leader, and that whole saying of putting your oxygen mask on first and making sure that you're building your own resilience and you're doing self-care. Because without that, it will be harder to provide a level of support to the team, because the team needs you really strong right now and healthy. So.
I just ran into the things that happen when you work from home with your spouse and the conference calls colliding at the
Yeah.
same time.
It's so normal though, right?
It is. It was like so
Yeah,
perfectly
yeah,
timed.
yeah,
Like these are some of the things that you have to work with, right?
yeah.
I think, you make such a great point. And this is one of the questions that has come up on this topic about being a great leader. And it really is about self-care. It's like you got to put your own oxygen mask on first, right? So in the idea of like self-care, I think you and I probably align very well on what does self-care mean for a leader. What do you think this means as far as caring for yourself first so you can care for others?
Well, there's the obvious, I guess, things like making sure you get enough sleep, making sure that you are taking some time out for yourself, and making sure that you're getting some sort of exercise or movement or mobility, like doing the things that actually are restorative for you and energizing for you. I think the other piece is really around having awareness of what's going on with you emotionally. So there's like the activities of doing these things that most of us are pretty good at building into our lives in some sort of, routine day, week manner, but really tuning into how are you feeling around all of this. And so self-care is like, gosh, I feel really drained right now. I feel really tired. I'm cranky. What's going on for me? And recognizing that as part of your self-care, and then, using whatever methods to help you manage through that. And giving yourself space and brain breaks for sure during this time. Like a lot of leaders right now are finding that they are on these virtual meetings for 6, 8, 10 hours a day, depending on what's happening in their business. And like, we all need a break, right?
Yeah.
The other day, and I told you the story the other day, last week, I was online so much, I had a 15-minute break. I went out into my yard and I took pictures of all the flowers in bloom. I didn't have time to go very far, but it was amazing how restorative it was for me
Yes.
just to like walk outside, connect with nature, and then I could come back. So when I mean self-awareness about, okay, recognizing that you need a break. So those are some of my ideas and practices.
I love it. Something that we have started doing, there's something that I do with my team and I've started doing in every meeting that I lead, which is, and I don't necessarily recommend this for everyone. It kind of depends on the culture that you have and the type of relationships that you have. But we start our meetings with a green, yellow, red exercise. And it's really about like, what space am I showing up in today? Am I green? Like everything's a go. Am I red? I need some extra support. Or if I'm a little standoffish or whatever your vice is, that it's not about you today. And we kind of do those check-ins to understand where people are. And one thing that we realized is we were not doing that with our executive team. We come into the meetings and we just get right down to business. And so we thought about like, we're doing this with the teams we lead, but not with this team that we're a part of. And so we had a moment where we just stopped and asked everybody how they were doing. And everybody shows up and they're doing great and they're putting that out there to their team, but no one's necessarily asking them how they're doing. And so, I think as leaders, yes, all the self-care, the obvious things that you talked about. The other things that I'm spending my time doing is talking to leaders one-on-one and making sure, I'm a coach at heart. So making sure that they have a coach and a support system to help them through things too, because they are human and they're living in this world as well. And they have extra added responsibilities of leading a team of people. So just making sure that they have the support they need, not just in the things they can do totally for themselves, but in that connection with another human that can help them see things from a different perspective. I think that's really insightful. Okay, I got another question here that is about, and this leads perfectly from the last one, which is about, it's about resilience. Resilience and how, as a leader, do you promote resilience in others? I think there's the side of empathy, and you can go really deep into how people are feeling, but we're also still in business and work has to get done and we have to produce things and there needs to be outputs from the work, right? And so from a leadership perspective, how do we help to instill and encourage resilience in our people? And I'll start with this one. I think part of it is actually just encouraging them to do the same things that we're talking about in our own self-care.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure you're getting enough sleep. It's one thing that I'm prioritizing heavily right now. Making sure that you are getting movement, moving your body. If there was ever a time to practice mindfulness, now's the time. Just sitting quietly and getting some of that restoration and recharging, and eating healthy foods and the things that fuel your body, but also having that support system and knowing where to draw from when you can't do it on your own, knowing who you can go to and who you can talk to. So from just a personal care perspective, I don't think there's a difference in the self-care aspects that we would talk about as leaders. Those are the things that we need to be encouraging our people to do as well. And for some leaders, that goes beyond what they would normally talk about with people. And I think this is as good a time as any to step into that.
Yeah, definitely. That was my initial thoughts to that question. And I think the other thing is, and that I've seen and talking with people who are leaders who are working their way through this, is part of people want to feel successful at work. They want to do a good job, and they want to do that, and they have all these additional pressures. So I think getting clear with your team on what success looks like, and putting potentially what's going on into some sort of structure that might be a little different, and then celebrating those successes, I think will help promote resilience within your team, because they're learning that they can navigate through and be successful in a different way of working. So, but being very explicit about it. So a colleague of mine is a small business owner. He sells to retailers, and 80% of his customers went out of business. They're in the restaurant business. And they went out of business once the Seattle area shelter in place went in, and his team didn't know what to do. And they were starting to, feel stressed and anxious. And so he helped them really just get organized and putting together, focusing on 1 week at a time, like keeping an eye on the long range, but putting some structure into what their week looked like that was different, so that they could feel a sense of accomplishment at the end of the week. And I thought it was really smart. And he was wondering if he was being too prescriptive or too tactical. And I said, I think your team actually needs this right now, right? They actually want to feel success. They want to feel productive. And this is probably the right thing for them right now. And I think activities like that do promote resilience in addition to the self-care. So that's a couple of things that I've seen and I think are good practices for helping people see how they can move through difficult situations and know that they can be successful at it.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree. And thinking about, this idea of structure, and how when people are going to a workplace, there's a lot of structure that's already set up for them. Whereas if you're working from home, you have to recreate that structure for yourself. And for many people, they're now trying to homeschool their kids, and they're trying to do their work, and they're trying to figure out how to juggle everything. And maybe they have a spouse who's also working from home, and so everything is new. And someone brought up the idea to me, this idea of when letting people know what success looks like, it's also about setting realistic expectations, and that there's this idea of being equitable but not equal. And so when you have a mother who has two small children that are now at home, and a husband who's now at home, whose husband's work is not as flexible as hers, and she's doing a lot more of the the shuffling around, and it's pretty exhausting. Helping each person individually, if you can, to define what success looks like for them, and to make the necessary adjustments in the expectation and goal setting, I think is pretty key. We had a question here that is along this line, and it is, I'm finding organization is key and I'm required to be more organized working remotely. Organization seems to greatly reduce stress and mitigate stress. What are your thoughts? So it's really funny, Edward, because I am a person that I kind of resist structure, like structure that's imposed upon me. But when everything is just out there and I can create it however I want, I completely agree with you. Even in the morning first thing or at night before I go to bed, thinking about like, what are the things that I need when I start my day? How am I organizing my day? What's the time box I'm putting around my work? And then, as a leader, I can help other people do that. If they're feeling stressed and overwhelmed and disorganized, going into a conversation with them and asking them where they feel like their roadblocks are, so that, I can help them kind of work out what that structure and organization might look like for them that will help to mitigate that stress and reduce the stress. Absolutely. Looking at our time here, we're coming up on the wrap up of our first session. And so, as always, when talking to you, Christine, the time flies. And I can't believe that we are already coming to the end. So just on this topic, we have, by the way, everyone who is listening, we have so many topics to talk about. Some of the things that we have talked about already around resilience, around, working from home, around helping working parents, that we've talked about addressing in our future sessions. And a big one that has come up is really helping people to mitigate burnout, never get to that burnout point. We're seeing more and more of that lately. And so those are some of the things that we're going to focus on in our upcoming sessions. And Christine, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with today?
I think we've talked about it, but I think it's, taking each day by day, like, affirming your vision, taking each day by day, taking care of yourself, taking care of your employees, your team members, your colleagues. And I think the other thing is like, use this as an opportunity for learning and innovation. I mean, that's a topic we haven't even tapped into, but it's pretty cool when you think about what new will come out of this or already has emerged. And while this can be stressful, there's a lot of excitement about what the future holds. So think about that too. And what does this mean for your team and your business, for you as an individual? And because we're all going to be coming out of this with this whole additional enhanced skill set and a lot of new ideas. So that's the only other thought. And while the weather's nice, wherever you are, take advantage of the sunshine, build in some breaks in the middle of the day. I mean, if that's possible, that can be very restorative as well. And at least in Seattle, we're not going through this while it's in January. So I'm like, take advantage of it for sure.
Absolutely. I think I want to wrap up with tying that all together with what you just said. You just took us from the past to focusing on the present and the future. And, the collective grief that's felt in the world right now is this loss of life as we knew it. And everybody kind of has to go through that. But now we are in this time where we can think about what is that future that we want to live. And as leaders, we're in a very unique position to be able to tap into creativity and innovation and adapt rather than stay stuck in the past. And we can do that by, making the most of the present and, getting out in the sunshine. And so thank you everybody who has joined us. Thank you so much, Christine, for sharing your wisdom. And if you look in the chat, everybody, I believe that Olivia has added in there where you can go to access some additional resources, and we're adding resources to that page continuously. And so keep visiting back there to see what is new, and join us next week. And if you enjoyed this, invite your friends and colleagues. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.